Welcome everybody to this Provo Municipal Council meeting on September 21st, 2021. And looks like we're trying to start right on time, 5:30. Meetings of the Municipal Council are now being held in hybrid fashion. Members of the public can continue to view the council meetings on YouTube and Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber at the Provo City Center. Elected officials, staff, and any presenters are participating in the council chamber or by using Zoom webinar. The coronavirus pandemic is not yet over, but vaccines are available. We encourage everyone who is eligible to get vaccinated. We encourage all people to protect themselves and others by following the protocols set by the CDC and our state and local health departments. Stay safe and be kind. This meeting is being broadcast live on the web on the Provo City Council YouTube channel, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking so as to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. We've got, let's see, we've got the council here in attendance. We've got the three of us counselors. We've also got other counselors attending online via Zoom. Looks like we're still, we expect Bill will join, and also Chair Sewell will join.
Yeah, for me, probably for Janine who's taking the notes, taking the minutes to name everybody. So in addition to the three of you here, Councilors Shipley and Harding and Hanley, we have Shannon Ellsworth and Travis Hoban are on Zoom right now.
Okay.
Bill and Dave will both join us as they can.
Okay. We also excuse the mayor this evening, but we do have Wayne Parker and Isaac Paxman, who just stepped out, joining us from the administration, as well as other staff from the city, and we welcome them. I will go ahead and get started tonight by having an opening prayer by Councilor Dave Harding.
Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening, grateful for our role in the Provo community. We are grateful for this beautiful city and for the many good people who live and work here. We ask thee for thy guidance throughout this meeting. Help us to be able to think clearly through these issues, to be able to discuss openly and clearly. And please bless all those who will participate, that we may keep our motivations pure and our discussion focused on what's best for the people, and to keep in mind all those who will be impacted by our decisions. We are grateful for the beauty that is around us and ask thee to bless those who put their safety on the line for the community and who do so much to serve the community. And this we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Harding. We'll go ahead and have the Pledge of Allegiance now by Councilor Ellsworth.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Ellsworth. First off tonight, we have a presentation by the Provo City Justice Court. It's the annual report, and this will be presented by Judge Rick Romney. And thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here this evening and give our annual report. It's a pleasure to be here with Rhianna Newton, our court administrator. I consider her the most capable and best court administrator in the state. We have a wonderful staff and they work hard every day to make sure that our customers at court are served well. Court customers rarely want to be there. And notwithstanding that, they are served by our very capable, well-trained and professional staff. You may be interested to know a little bit about the history of the justice courts. The Roman conquest of Great Britain brought concepts of justice that redounded through the English-speaking world. William the Conqueror's arrival in Great Britain in 1066 added to the evolution of the common law. King Richard in 1155 issued a proclamation establishing a procedure for maintenance of public order. The proclamation required all men to obey the law. Knights were assigned to sit in judgment of persons who committed breaches of the king's peace. These knights were the first conservators of the peace, and they were ancestors of today's justices of the peace. They were commissioned by the king to keep the peace. These knights were required to hear regular reports from the local constables and thereafter report to the chief justiciar. Turbulent years followed thereafter, and King Edward III in 1360 enacted a statute which is thought to have created the first office of Justice of the Peace. This statute, enacted by King Edward III, called for one lord and several of those deemed to be the most worthy to become justices to administer the king's law and determine at the king's suit all manner of felonies and trespasses done in the same county. The office of Justice of the Peace reached the pinnacle of prestige and importance in Great Britain during the early 18th century. The colonization of America brought with it, obviously, the English common law and statutory law, and the office of the Justice of the Peace came with it. The Charter of 1663, issued by King Charles II, gave proprietors of the colonies the right to appoint justices and other officials. In general, the colonial version of the Office of Justice of the Peace reflected the needs of the times. Riots, civil disturbances, and violence took up the bulk of the justices' time. As America grew, of course, the colonization went westward, and the variety of cases the justices heard and decided expanded. In September 1850, the U.S. Congress passed a law establishing the Utah Territory. This act included a territorial Supreme Court, federal district courts, and local justices of the peace. The Utah Constitution, ratified in 1895, provided for the Office of Justice of the Peace. This made the Office of Justice of the Peace an integral part of our judicial system. On January 4th, 1896, Utah was admitted to statehood. Territorial courts transitioned into state courts with the authority provided in the Utah Constitution, Article 8. The Constitution allowed for courts not of record, justices of the peace courts, to be established by statute. Going further, in 1986, the judicial code dealing with justice courts was amended to read, under Article 8, Section 1 of the Utah Constitution, there is created a court not of record known as the Justices Court. In 1989, after further amendment, the name of the court system became the Justice Court System, and the judges became known as Justice Court judges. Justice courts are established by counties and municipalities and have the authority to determine and adjudicate Class B and C misdemeanor infraction criminal cases, violation of ordinances, and small claim civil matters within their territorial jurisdiction. Our Provo City Justice Court has jurisdiction to handle cases of this nature within the city limits. Some of the more common of our criminal cases which we handle involve DUI, domestic violence offenses such as assault, criminal mischief, and domestic violence in the presence of a child, disorderly conduct, intoxication, and theft. While that's not exhaustive, that gives you a sense of a lot of the cases that we do handle. Each justice court judge is appointed by the executive, the mayor in the case of the municipal justice court judge. The judge is appointed from a list of names submitted to the executive. The executive's appointment of the justice court judge is ratified by the local executive body, in our case, the city council. All Utah judges are obligated to comply with the Code of Judicial Conduct adopted by the Utah Supreme Court. This code consists of 4 general principles called canons. Each canon contains several specific rules. Canon 1 deals with judicial independence, integrity, impartiality, and impropriety. Canon 2 addresses judges' on-bench activities. Canon 3 addresses judges' off-bench activities. Canon 4 establishes rules for political activity by judges. In fiscal year 2020, and that's the year for which the most recent statistics are available, the justice courts in Utah had 388,203 case filings. During the same fiscal year, the district courts had 253,039 case filings. The juvenile courts had 22,760 case filings. That indicates that nearly 60% of all cases filed in Utah courts are filed in the justice courts. The justice courts handled a majority of the criminal cases in Utah, 63,685 case filings. The district courts handled 41,605 criminal case filings. These numbers show that the limited jurisdiction justice courts handle more cases than their general jurisdiction counterparts. Our Provo City Justice Court, coming down to the more granular level, received 11,083 case filings in fiscal year 2020. There were 2,004 criminal cases filed, 1,035 small claims cases filed, and 8,044 traffic cases filed in our court. There are fewer criminal case filings in justice courts than there are traffic filings, but the criminal cases take more of the judge's time. Proceedings in these cases are governed by the Utah Rules of Criminal Procedure. A defendant has the rights guaranteed to him by the United States Constitution and the Utah Constitution, including the right to be represented by counsel, the right to a jury trial. Most of these criminal cases are resolved by plea agreements, similarly as they are in the district courts. Many of the criminal trials are bench trials in which the judge makes a determination of guilty or not guilty, as opposed to jury trials where the jury makes that determination. District court cases are generally more complex and time-consuming, but the fact remains that citizens are more likely to come to our limited jurisdiction justice court than a general jurisdiction court. In large measure, our entire system is being experienced by everyday citizens who interact with limited jurisdiction justice courts. The justice courts in Utah, and Provo City's Justice Court in particular, provide a very important service to the communities they serve. The quality of these courts is important to all parties involved in the criminal justice system and the judicial system in general. We are pleased that our mental health court program, which has been ongoing since our court was established in 2007, continues to be effective in reducing recidivism. Programs like mental health court have helped transform the way we hold nonviolent offenders accountable and help reduce repeat crime. We are pleased with our dedicated domestic violence calendar heard on Wednesday mornings. This calendar helps in the resolution of these domestic violence cases and brings together defendants, their attorneys, prosecutors, victim advocates, and service providers to better handle these cases. I currently serve as chair of the Board of Justice Court Judges in Utah. The board oversees the management and resolution of issues involving all of Utah's justice courts. I serve on the Trust and Confidence Committee of the Justice Courts, which is responsible to improve public awareness of justice courts and what they do and what they mean in our communities. I'm also the presiding justice court judge in our 4th district. This position gives a single point of contact for the effective operation of justice courts within the district. The presiding judge is responsible for the implementation and enforcement of statutes, rules, policies, and directives of the Judicial Council as they pertain to the administration of the courts. In closing, I think you might find interesting the words of Chief Justice John Roberts of the United States Supreme Court. This is what he said at his confirmation hearing. Judges are servants of the law, not the other way around. Judges are like umpires. Umpires don't make the rules, they apply them. The role of an umpire and judge is critical. They make sure everybody plays by the rules, but it is a limited role. Nobody ever went to the ball game to see an umpire. Like the Chief Justice, I understand that my role is limited. I try the best I can to call the balls and strikes as I see them and to be fair and impartial. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to serve in Provo City as the Justice Court Judge. In the court, I work with some of the best people that I know. Thank you for your support of our Justice Court It is an honor and a privilege to serve in our community. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity
Appreciate
to
it.
be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and transition into our public comment period. Mr. Strachan, would you give us the rules of the public comment period?
Be happy to. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded the second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. And the public comment period starts now.
And while we're waiting for that first comment, I failed to note that Chair Sewell and Bill Fillmore are both present. So we've got the full council here. All right. Any public comments?
There's no one online at the moment.
All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move to our first agenda item. Action implied motion, which is a resolution for the appointment of Amanda Ercanbrack as the Director of Customer Service. This will be presented by Deputy Mayor Isaac Paxman.
As directed by Mayor Kafusi, will be presenting from the podium today and welcome Ms. Ercanbrack to my side. I'm confident that if she were here, she would pause though to recognize some of the great staff from customer service leadership and others who are here. They've been very helpful in a transition period, which is always a challenge, and just want to express the appreciation that Mayor Kafusi and the rest of the administration has for each of them. I have a prepared statement from Mayor Kafusi to read. Esteemed members of the Provo Municipal Council, first, let me publicly thank our outgoing department director, Karen Larson, for her over 32 years of dedicated service to Provo City. Karen will always carry the distinction of being Provo City's first female department director. We sincerely appreciate her decades of hard work and wish her well in retirement. I am thrilled to nominate Amanda Ercanbrack as our next director for the Customer Service Department. With your vote of consent, Amanda will bring a valuable set of skills and gifts to the post. She is excellent with technology and excellent with people. Amanda began her career in customer service and has recently been serving with distinction as our city recorder. Her background, experience, and personal touch have qualified her to be an ambassador for both this department and the city. I am confident in her capacity to lead the customer service department successfully into the future. Thank you, Michelle Kafusi, Mayor of Provo. So unless there are any questions or anything else, that's our presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Any comments? Thank you very much and congratulations.
I just wanted to
Yes.
say congratulations. Very, very excited for this opportunity for you. I know it'll be a great blessing to the city and to our whole organization in the city. Thanks.
I'm really excited.
Yes. Ms.
And if
Murray.
I may, I can't think of a person that is better suited for this. I've just been so impressed with your professionalism and your, the word just escaped me, just your capacity, your ability to get things done. It's been a joy to work with you over the years, and I'm thrilled that you're stepping into this position.
Thank you. I will miss the council meetings, but I'll still be close by.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you. So we do have an implied motion. The motion is for advice and consent on the appointment of Amanda Ercanbrack as Director of Customer Service. So any questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, let's take a vote. Chair Sewell.
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor Hanley.
Yes.
Councillor Harding.
Yes.
And I, Dave Shipley, will vote yes and excited for that. So it's unanimous. That motion passes unanimously. All right, on to item 2. Item 2 is a resolution appropriating $400,000 for City Hall public art. If any members of the public would like to give a comment for this item, they're encouraged to call in or sign in now for the online part. And this will be presented by Cliff Strachan, City Council Executive Director, and Brent Tippett of VCBO Architecture.
All right, thank you, council. My plan is, if you bring up my slides, my plan is just to give an overview of a public arts program, a percent for public arts program, and then to the specific item that's been under discussion, Brent Tippett will come up and talk about that. So there are over 350 cities and state governments in this country that do a percent for arts program dating back to about 1959. The basic concept is to provide funding for public art by setting aside a percentage of capital improvement project budgets for the integration of art into our various public facilities, whether it's a building, a space, or in many cases, they do them in streetscapes as well. From a survey I found done by, and I can't remember the name of the organization now, but they support public art, and these were excerpts from these various cities as to where they had described public art as part of a mission statement. Moscow, Idaho, attracting tourism. Los Altos, improving the aesthetic quality of public spaces. Bernalillo County, New Mexico, the power to inspire curiosity, encourage contemplation, facilitate dialogue, foster community engagement, and create a sense of place. And the one thing that I saw in the many different cities that had mission statements for arts programs where I found them, the one thing that stands out is this creating a sense of place. And certainly I think that was the intent of the project that you're being asked to contemplate. Public arts programs, percent for public arts programs, finance them a number of ways. You might levy a percentage against a capital project. You might allocate a fixed amount of the city's capital budget for public art. And then there's 3 different types where you partner with different organizations, government departments, or say private sector, or even like a Downtown Provo Inc. And then you can also, some cities will actually have a way of doing it where a developer will come along and in exchange for some negotiated benefit like higher density or some improvement, they'll provide some art into the city. Utah's examples, I just pulled up 3 for you. The state has a program. They designate 1% of construction costs of new and or renovated state public buildings is added to the project for the purpose of commissioning, maintaining, and conserving site-specific art at, on, or in the facility. And in terms of the appropriation that you're being asked to consider today, I think this would fit. This is adding money to the original project in order to provide for public art in the new building. Salt Lake City, they just recently, for the first time since 1984, increased their rate to 1.5% of their capital projects. And part of the reason that they did it was to properly maintain the art once it's installed. And then they also do grants with it. Ogden City was a city that used to have a percent for arts program in terms of the traditional concept. They've made some changes in recent years. They've tied it to their revenue from the Business Depot Ogden, which, Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that has to do with federal properties that are rented out, leased out. And then so what they've done is they've got an arts account budget of $500,000 or an account for it in which they put up to $200,000 from it, from this leasing. And then they handle it in two ways. They have, or three ways. They have large projects that are approved by the council. They have some minor projects up to $35,000 approved by the mayor. And then they also have a grants program that's handled by an arts council. Why does it matter? Public art, this comes from the Public Art Network Council's green paper. Public art does something that neither a public space without art nor a museum with all its art can do. It can capture the eye and mind of someone passing through our public spaces. It can make us pay attention to our civic environment. It creates a sense of civic vitality in the cities, towns, and communities we inhabit and visit. And if you think about the various places that you've traveled, very often what your memories will go to, the things that you were attracted to, that you go get your pictures with and such, are those pieces of art in the various cities that you've been to. I know that, my hometown of Vancouver, British Columbia, one of the most popular places people go is to Stanley Park. And what do they go looking for in Stanley Park? Is the giant totem poles. You go to the Space Needle because it's an edifice of magnificence. So public art, whether it's a building or whether it's a statue or whether it's some kind of reflecting pool like you see, say, in Salt Lake and different places, those are what people are attracted to. And they distinguish us from having plain ordinary buildings and spaces into something that is attractive and inviting. And is there any questions for me before I turn time over to Brent to talk about the water feature? Now you're being asked, Brent, you're being asked to consider an appropriation tonight for $400,000, which is intended to be backup for arts. But in other words, the backup part of it is if the project cannot be finished within the established budget for this new city hall building, this money will come out of the general fund and be available to finish the art project that's being proposed. And I turn my time.
So thank you and for this opportunity and your consideration of this element. And I apologize, I'm a little weak in voice tonight, but as the architect of many notable buildings within the city of Provo, we've always strived to provide a level of excellence and of quality to your community. In that vein, I'm here to share with you features specifically related to the topic in front of you of the fountain, the proposed fountain for the City Hall project. In a recent report by the National Engagement for the Arts, it states, arts and civic engagement demonstrates with statistically reliable data that arts participation overwhelmingly correlates with positive individual and civic behaviors, something our world today needs. Put simply, Americans who engage in the arts are more active in community life than those who do not. I believe that the proposed fountain will make significant contribution to downtown Provo and to the City Hall project. Art has historically been an integral part of civic projects, as Mr. Strachan has clearly delineated. I mean, you see it around the world. You see it in Trevi Fountain in Rome. You see it in the mall in Washington, D.C. Even our state capital of Utah has water features that surround it, that are part of that project, that enhance the grounds and the campus in which it lies upon. And even within the city of Provo, such as at the Provo 4th District Courthouse,
there is a notable art piece on the plaza in that project, which I'm proud to say I was part of that project and the design of that and of the selection of the artwork that took place there. Many government entities, again, as Clifford has demonstrated, require a percentage of construction to be contributed to the arts. The General Service Administration reserves 0.5% of estimated construction cost of each new federal building to commission projects art for that building. And as demonstrated, the state of Utah requires 1% to be committed, and your community has benefited from that in the past, including the previously noted 4th District Courthouse project. That's how that project was funded. I want to share with you kind of some of the elements that led to the selection of this piece of art for the plaza and for this project. Some of the reasons that this project was selected over money that were looked at and considered was, one, that it's unique and impactful. There's nothing like it in the Western United States. So it is something that will stand out as a feature unique to Provo City. Another factor is it was interactive and not static. It has the ability to change and progress over time. It also provides the benefit to the building, both from the interior of the building and looking out and observing it, and also from the exterior, specifically for the plaza and the surrounding areas. But maybe even more impactful is the notion of it being the gateway entrance to the city as you come from the west. It also relates to the scale of the building. It relates to the public space that surrounds it. I believe it also reflects a forward-looking ideal for the city and not something that is, quote, more traditional in its art form. I commend the leadership for their wise management of this project. Obviously, I've worked with them very closely. During unprecedented times that include a pandemic, social unrest, and material and product shortages that are unlike any that I've experienced in my 40-year career. Amidst all of this, I'm proud to say that this project is on budget and it is on schedule. Part of that lends to our being here today. Although unanimously agreed upon by the steering committee that this art piece was the right selection for this project, the funds for the fountain were anticipated to come from construction contingency that is already part of the project budget. With another 8 to 9 months still left in the project to its completion, it was deemed prudent that we not tie up contingency funds at this time, but preserve those to address any unforeseen conditions that may come out. So again, I commend the leadership of the city for that type of decision in doing it. However, that leaves us with a dilemma when it comes to the fountain. The first thought was just wait and see if the contingency funds would be available towards the end of the project before we commit to them. The problem we're up against is the schedule is that the plaza is scheduled to be poured and completed in the next 2 months. So it is not practical that you would want to come back and tear out what was already just installed and at a higher price to do so. So we're kind of at a tipping point to either move forward with the fountain or not to move forward with the fountain. There is no alternative to provide the fountain without substantial cost and delays in the future if we don't proceed today. So with this information, again, I want to thank the council for your consideration, for your willingness to hear this presentation, and for your willingness, hopeful, to support the funding that would allow for this art piece and fountain to proceed. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have specifically related to the fountain itself, if you have any.
Thank you. Questions from the council? I have a quick question, just for the sake of the public. Who's on the steering committee? Who is that made up of?
That's composed of the mayor, Mr. Parker, the CAO, Isaac, the police chief, the fire chief, Dick Blackham, the facilities manager, and also Scott Henderson, the project manager on this project.
Okay, thank you. And were there any committees along the way for input from any public, anybody from the public?
No.
Okay.
And I will add that traditionally in the selection process, such as through the state projects, it's very similar process.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Henley?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for all your work on the whole project. We're very excited about it. My understanding is words can be projected onto and images. Is that correct? Onto the water?
Has the ability to create any kind of a form through water. For those that may not know what we're talking about, this fountain feature is a computer operated wall of water that can in essence create any image, excuse me, create any image in water vertically that would fall down. And so, yes, it could be letters, it could be words, it could be shapes and forms. It has been discussed that there is no desire for this to become any kind of a announcement board, a political platform, or anything for that. So it's a piece of art, and that's what it would represent.
I'm glad to hear that. I like that idea very much, rather than using it for informational purposes or propaganda purposes. I mean, I'm a literature professor and sometimes teach visual art as well. And I would love to imagine poetic phrases or artistic images, either abstract or representational, that could be projected on there that would maybe, for different times and opportunities, become a message of some kind that's artistic in its essence. So I'm glad to hear that that's not the intention to use it as a billboard.
That was clear direction when it was decided to go this direct way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Looks like we have one, but I can't see who. Councilor Fillmore.
Thank you. There's been a misperception, I think, on the part of some members of the public that this water feature would constitute a colossal waste of water in the midst of a drought. Can you clarify that and help us understand how the water is recycled?
It's a great question, and happy to answer that. This water feature it's recyclable. It does not waste water. The only water that would be lost from it would be through evaporation and perhaps some spillage if there was any, but it's being designed so that there are not any kind of substantial spillage. Very minimal amount of water would be lost or have to be replenished.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Harding?
Thank you. I appreciate your answers. I thought I had seen an image before that had kind of a full color Provo logo on it, and that seemed different than some of the videos that I've seen of actual installations. So I'm thinking it's more like the videos we've seen and less of like a full color.
Well, let me describe a little bit more about the process of it. Again, there are these very small jets of water that shoot down, operated by a computer, that allow different shapes to take place across the entire wall. In addition to that, there's lighting that goes along with it, LED lighting, and that LED lighting does have the ability to have color. It would be provided so that you can introduce color. You could see a rainbow go across the wall, or you could do it, and that impact would be more in the evening. That lighting would not have a great deal of impact during the day, but during the day, just the water itself would have that visual impact, and that would be monochromatic at that point. But there is the opportunity to introduce color if desired.
Okay, thank you. The the question I have, and I've seen a couple renderings, but not recently, or my biggest, the concern that I have right now, and I've asked it earlier, and I don't, ask for an answer later on, so hopefully we can have it now, but as was discussed last time, this is a plaza in front of our city hall. It may function as kind of a gathering place, both for just people that are coming to interact with the city, but it might also, even be a place for people to gather, to express grievances or whatever. And I think it's an important aspect of this plaza. And I was concerned that depending on the placement of the fountain, it might kind of inhibit the function of this plaza as a gathering place, a rallying point. Do you have any, or who would be the best person to talk to about the placement and the impact that could have?
I can share from a design perspective. That consideration has been in place from day one, as far as the ability to have it a gathering place on the plaza. From day one, from the initial concepts of the building, and as the plaza developed, there was always an art piece in that. The footprint of the sculpture is very linear and does not take up a substantial amount of room, any more than any of the art that we have previously represented conceptually in the past. So there is still a large area on the plaza and around the plaza that could be used for public gatherings. And I would make the argument that in this case, I think this water feature and the sound of water would be an enhancement to those types of gatherings. And as I previously said, it would be a calming influence perhaps in those settings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does this particular feature have some kind of manufacturer warranty agreement, something to maintain? I mean, if it's one of a kind, then I just worry that our capacity to manage it and maintain it might be a challenge.
So the technology it comes out of Germany. The maintenance and operation and installation of this will be locally.
Okay.
It is by a company that understands it. The technology is not unlike any other water jets. It's just that there are a lot of these linearly that go through. As you all know, that there are at the recreation center, there are some water jets there. It's in essence the same type of water jet, same type of maintenance, and that is done by a local company that can service it and take care of it.
Thank you. Other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to public comment on this item. Thank you for your help. If you'd like to speak to this item, go ahead and raise your hand if you're online, or go ahead and approach the microphone if you'd like to make a comment. Comments for this item will be limited to 2 minutes. Anything online, Mr. Strachan?
There are not there's no one in the queue at the moment.
Okay. Anybody here like to make a comment on this item? All right, I'll close public comment then. That was so nice. Okay, we'll go back to discussion as a council. So let's go ahead and discuss the appropriation. Comments from the council. Mr. Harding.
I'll lead out. I appreciated Mr. Strachan's presentation earlier. I strongly support having components of public art. I think that's very important. Regardless of our decision tonight, I think I would hate for any decision that we make to be considered, not being supportive of public art. I've thought about this a bit as we've received a fair amount of email and comments about this over the past couple of weeks. I do feel that 600,000 is probably reasonable for a public art component for a public building of this scope and its role. I am generally wary of the council becoming the arbiter of the aesthetics of art pieces, and so I'm very wary of that. The timing has been discussed here, and I think that does make our decision. It does kind of put us in a bind a bit. That I do feel like we do need to make a decision tonight or very soon, and so that does put us a bit in a bind. I would be open to hearing from the administration, directly, how important is this particular aspect to them. We've heard that it's been the recommendation of the committee. I just want to make sure that I fully understand, how much they, how strongly they feel about this aspect. Then through that, so that's kind of how I'm weighing this out, where I'm at with this. I have heard many comments from the public. Some are worried about water consumption. I'm not worried about that. I think that, the estimates, if they're anywhere close, 10 gallons a week, I think that's something that that is reasonable for something like this. I have to say I'm a little bit concerned with price. Again, this is not an area I'm very wary of getting into. And I do feel like I can rely on the administration on this if they feel like this is a reasonable price. As I said, I think for art, generally for this project, I think that it's reasonable, and if it makes sense to use it all in this, so I can live with that. Perhaps the thing I'm struggling the most with is the suggestions by the public. What if we commissioned local artists, or kind of opened it up for ideas from the community on how to best use $600,000. That's a lot, and could go a long ways to supporting artists in the area, as well as we talk about placemaking. If that's that's our end goal. Could the 600,000 fund something that would be even a bigger placemaker and multiple things. Anyway, so that's when I read those comments, I'm having a hard time arguing against them. I think those are really strong points. So I'm balancing that with wanting to kind of, or not wanting to wade in and become the arbiter of aesthetics, and wanting to support the process that the administration has been in the middle of, or has been undertaking for a long time. And I think that they're doing a good job with that, and so I'm a little wary to wade into that. So that's where my thoughts are. I don't know if I don't have a final answer on this, but that's what I'm trying to weigh out right now.
Can we, to Mr. Harding's question about the administration, can we have someone from the administration speak to process, and then maybe commitment at this point to it, or desire for it at this point?
Yeah, let me try to characterize that in the mayor's absence. I'm hoping I reflect what we have talked about. So having a significant, as Brent indicated, having a significant piece of public art in the plaza has always been part of the equation. Early renderings only included a planter, thinking that whatever we did, we would put in the planter or near the planter. And so as we began the process of thinking about art related to the facility, this was a very early on decision. I'd say a year ago, probably. We looked at various options for a noticeable piece of public art. And as Brent also indicated, one of the key things was it would be interactive. It would not just be something people would drive by and say, "Oh, that's cool. I wonder what it is." It would be something that people would want to park, walk over to, observe. We love the flexibility in that various kinds of visual art could be depicted on the water wall. It wasn't just one artist or one piece. It had that element of flexibility. We liked the water feature because there is a very interactive water feature right across the street. Certainly not art. That's all play. It's all recreation. It's it's a splash pad that attracts many people every year. It replaced what was the very elemental water feature of an irrigation canal that used to run through Pioneer Park, or at least along the the 500 West frontage. So as the project developed, and as you're all aware, the challenge with materials, construction costs, supply chain issues, we started getting a little nervous several weeks ago, and thinking, yeah, we've got a good construction contingency. It exceeds the $600,000 number, but if push came to shove over the remaining months left in this project, that we might have to cut something out of the building that would be really important functionally to the city operation. If we were judging between that and the water feature, it was pretty easy to decide which one got cut. We feel like we committed to the voters to bring a project in that reflected what we told them we would do. The water feature was an important component because we believe in public art, in public spaces. We were super excited about it. As the steering committee and as the city administration, it was a very bitter pill to swallow, to think that we might have to eliminate it from the project. But if it meant the difference between coming in on time and on budget, or not coming in on time or on budget, it was a pretty easy choice to make, to take it out of the project. That being said, we still are really excited about the opportunity. And so as conversations ensued with members of the council after we essentially pulled it out of the project, the idea was raised, well, what if we could work together and identify potentially another funding source outside of the project budget, or as in the case with the resolution you have in front of you today, which essentially just guarantees that there will be enough money. Ideally, we won't have to tap any of that. And if we can bring the project in without dipping into contingency, we'll have enough to complete it. So this basically gets, as Brent suggested, to the point where it's essentially guaranteeing the funding, whether it comes out of contingency or some other source. So again, I think we still feel really good about the project. We, again, part of the challenge of showing a rendering in one sense or posting a video online of another is that the water wall in the Czech Republic is substantially larger than what we'll be putting in front of City Hall. And that, as you see people walking by, and it's not of that scale and scope, but it's the same sort of technology that we would be looking at. So again, it's kind of hard to tell from a rendering posted on social media or a YouTube video that shows the technology exactly what it will look like. It is of much more modest scale than what you might have seen in the YouTube videos. But again, our sense is that it would be invigorating to the west end of downtown. We think that's a positive. This is an area, again, with the new City Hall, the potential redevelopment of our current site, and a very striking interactive water feature could really help stimulate some additional work on the west end of downtown. And we think that's a side benefit of this that you would not get if you just had a sculpture piece that would exist in front of City Hall. So that's kind of the story behind it. Obviously, if there's not a financial guarantee, we just won't do it. That would be disappointing for us. We think it's a great opportunity to do something pretty remarkable, but we also understand if that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So So I don't know, Isaac, would you add anything to that analysis? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanley?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Harding's comments, I think, resonated with me. I just have a couple of quick thoughts and then a question about funding. One thought, it was something Mr. Harding mentioned that I felt too. I certainly feel like the broader conversation here about public art and local artists is a really important conversation for us to have as a community. I am a fierce advocate of local artists, and I do believe we need to do more, as I said 2 weeks ago, in this city to celebrate and promote and facilitate their expression and their contributions to the community. I don't think this is a zero-sum game here in this particular case. I mean, I'm actually thinking of ways in which words and images could be locally generated. I don't know if we could have school kids contests about poetry and images that represent Provo or something. We can have local poets and local artists. I don't know. That's actually a little bit of a question I have in terms of who manages the daily process of what images get put up. But if there's an opportunity for like a week where we have local high school kids, brainstorming about what goes on there, and that becomes a feature of it. It seems to me there's lots of opportunities here to multiply the benefit of the work in a way that makes it local rather than, I just don't think the goal would be over time that no one really is concerned so much about who actually was the original conceptual genius behind this structure, and that it's actually a sort of becomes a kind of public voice. I don't know if that's consistent with what you were saying, but I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Actually, I think you hit on it very well. Maybe the best way to define it is we're providing a canvas that gives the opportunity. And when we talk about forward thinking and the opportunity to bring in local artists, poetry, whatever it is, this is a format that would allow that. It is very versatile from that standpoint. That's really one of the attractive things to this element is the opportunities are boundless that could be shared through this, other than the fact that there needs to be some types of rules and restraints on it, as we've talked about, that there would be. As far as the management of that information, it would be through a designated person within the city that would be managing that content, making sure that it's controlled.
Thank you.
Just while you're right here, what are the dimensions of this particular feature? Sorry, we'll get right back to you.
I always hate it when I get called on the carpet. There's something I should know and I can't tell you exactly, but roughly the dimensions of the water itself is 14 feet tall and approximately that wide, 14 by 14.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's just a thought I had as I was listening, that it seems to me like and that it could become a way of increasing a public voice and public expression, local public expression. But that raises my sort of last comment and maybe question is, if we were to fund this, I guess I'm wondering, I'm a little bit unclear. I would like to leverage this conversation so that we actually do have a plan for more public art and public engagement. And if we were to use the legacy funds, we do have $400,000 in that fund, correct?
We do have $429,100 in that fund.
Okay.
The intent of this is that because it's also a general fund, the legacy fund is a general fund. In the end, whether that comes out of that or within the existing general fund budget is to be determined if needed, if you read the second line on that, on that part one.
Right. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, do we need to decide if we say yes to this, do we need to decide right away that at the very least we have that money, that's where it can come from, but we would like to develop a percent for arts policy. And if we did develop that policy, could that be retroactively applied to this particular case, or is that train gonna leave the station and we're just gonna have to figure out how?
I don't know if you'd retroactively, but you'd certainly, part of the reason we started having the discussion on the percent for arts was it was something, in the back of our minds anyway. And then when this issue came up, it was a recognition that now is the time to have one. And if we're going to have one, if we create one a year from now, but we didn't do it for our new building, we're not going to look really forward looking when we get there, right? So the thinking was, let's give you a little outline of what a percent for art program looks like, and then let's have a discussion on how to structure that and build that. But in the meantime, you have a need where we're very close to, within 2 or 4 weeks of a go, no go decision on this particular piece of art. And so the direction we got from the last council work meeting where we talked about it just briefly was, yes, we'd like to hear more about a percent for arts program. And we talked about it at leadership that we are going to put together a proposal for that. And then however you fund it going forward, when you fund it, I mean, that's why I showed you the one slide that had all the different ways of funding it, is because there's lots of different ways to think about how you do it. And we need to discuss those with you in more depth. But this would be, kind of the impetus or I don't know what the right word is, but you're the creative writer, but it becomes the starting point of what we hope is a percent for arts program going forward.
And theoretically, we could be, in essence, loaning this money from legacy and paying it back with percent for arts at some point in the future. Theoretically, we could do that.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. That's kind of what I was wondering in my mind, if that's what we were essentially doing. And I think that feels better to me. And knowing that this is really a backup to something that may not necessarily be needed in its entirety. Hopefully not.
Right.
So I'm supportive. I understand. I think Mr. Harding put his finger on it. I don't want to be in the position of deciding whether something's aesthetically pleasing or not. But I do feel like I'm in a position to say this is the right space and the right opportunity and the right location in the city for something of this kind. The steering committee has made a decision about what they want. It's less than 1% of the budget, as far as I can tell. It's like 9/10 of 1%. This is a humanities professor doing math on the fly. So, but that's how I calculated it. And so it seems to me reasonable, even though I know art of this kind can be very expensive. And it's, understandably a little bit shocking to people to sort of hear that number and hear it isolated from a very large and complex project that has, I think, responsibly left this to the status that it's in right now. As much as it pains me to admit that, art should not be ahead of a lot of other things in a project like this, but I also feel like we have the ability to keep this in the project, and I'd like to find a way to make it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the discussion that's gone forward. It's been very informative. Thank Brett especially, and the counselors who have commented with their observations. Just speaking personally, I'm very much in favor of the percent for arts program. I think public art is critical to any self-respecting, viable municipality. I think Provo deserves it and will benefit from it. Plus, if we put that program in place, that all by itself should be a great support and assist to our local artists. This piece in particular I really appreciate the multiple functionality of it. I think it's certainly appropriate price-wise for this project of the magnitude of City Hall. I I just appreciate the fact that it's so innovative and distinctive. It's even refreshing. It's interactive, it's fun, it's informative. Potentially, it's another enhancement to our downtown area. I really believe that the vast majority of our citizens will be quite pleased with this. And we are under a bit of a time crunch. There's not a whole lot of time to look for other alternatives, but given that circumstance, I'm fully supportive of it and appreciate the efforts by the architect and the administration to put such a distinctive feature forward for us.
Additional comments at this time? Maybe first comments from Chair Sewell. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shipley. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Sounds like Disneyland in the background.
Yes, it is. I'd just like to say, first of all, I really appreciate the comments by Councillor Harding, Hanley, and Fillmore. I think they've captured most of what I wanted to say. I think the only thing I would add is I have a lot of confidence in our administration and in the steering committee for this project in particular. And I don't want to second guess them on this. I feel like they're looking decades into the future on this, and that the majority of our citizens will be happy that we have something like this for the building and for this entrance to our city. So I'm supportive.
Thank you. Other comments from the council? I'll make my comment real quick and then get to Ms. Ellsworth. And I'll just say that, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, so I don't need to reiterate the whole comment, but I see this as a significant commitment to the bigger issue here in my mind, which is a commitment to art and the whole percent for the arts commitment. I think is substantial. I think it's not a zero-sum game, like Mr. Hanley so well put. I think most of percent for the arts going forward would be to benefit local artists and a continuation of what Provo's done such a great job. I think it is worth mentioning that DPI and the Arts Council and Parks and Recreation have done a phenomenal job with very little budget to this point in the city to create places of art and to do amazing things with art in this city. And one of the most, I think, intriguing comments of public feedback that I got on this particular issue is, look what we've done without 600,000. We've done quite a few things. And in my mind, I'm saying, yeah, I mean, we have accomplished a lot with a shoestring budget to date, with art in Provo. This takes it up a lot of levels in my mind and creates something innovative and different and appealing, and something that could be very beautiful and artistic if managed correctly. And I'm confident that the administration, as they vetted this, had that in mind, that it could be something beautiful and artistic and welcoming. And so I'm supportive of it. Ms. Ellsworth.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my comments in this discussion. It's nothing that wasn't discussed last time, but I am very supportive of this percent for arts idea, the concept. I wish that this had been adopted 6 months ago, a year ago, 10 years ago. I think that it will add a lot to our community. I'm still not supportive of going over budget for this particular water feature. I wish that we were willing to create a dialogue around alternatives and willing to respect the boundaries of this budget that the voters bonded for. So those are my concerns, but I appreciate the differing views that we all have.
Thank you. Other comments before we take a vote? And just to clarify on this ordinance that we're looking at, and maybe legal or Mr. Strachan can help us with this. If we give this an affirmative vote, Are we able, after the fact, to establish kind of a repayment, some kind of recourse from a percent for the arts program after the fact to then pay back potential usage of the legacy fund? Or is that something that wouldn't be able to happen after the fact based on the current wording in the ordinance?
I don't think there's anything in the current wording of the ordinance that prohibits that. In fact, as Mr. Strachan pointed out, this may end up in an appropriation that doesn't even get spent and just falls back into the general fund. But even if it does get spent, it's going to all hinge on how you create the percent for arts program. I mean, one way to consider this is that this is essentially seed money for a yet to be created percent for arts program, that when you create it, you take into account the fact that money has already been spent, and you structure that program, like you said, to rebuild the fund somehow.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments before we vote? Mr. Hanley.
I just have a quick question, and that is if I feel strongly that we should have on a future agenda item the discussion of the percent for arts. I don't know if that requires a motion to be attached to this, or is that something we can just
Leadership will bring that back.
You'll bring it back, and then we'll move forward on that. That's
Right.
okay.
We're going to put a lot more substance to it and come to you with some more, get you starting to go down the list in terms of, what do you want in it and how do you fund it and what does it look like and things like that.
That's great.
Other comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Chair Sewell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shipley will vote yes. Councillor Ellsworth?
No.
Councillor Fillmore?
Yes.
Councillor Hoban?
No.
Councillor Hanley?
Yes.
Councillor Harding?
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes 5-2 with Councillors Ellsworth and Hoban against or no. Okay, so it passes. On to the next item, item 3. There's a resolution appropriating $39,982 in the general fund and $83,296 in the energy fund to correct elements of the fiscal year 21-22 budgets. If anybody in the public would like to speak to this, go ahead and sign in now. This will be presented by John Borgett, Administration Services Director. Mr. Borgett.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shipley and Council. This year in our adopted budget, we had a $304 million budget. It's quite a complex budget with a lot of moving parts and pieces. And as we've experienced over the first several months, we found a couple of errors that were in the budget that we're coming back to the council asking for your approval. It's primarily related to some expenses, or what we refer to as chargebacks for one department to charges another department for services. And then there was some changes kind of towards the very end of the process for the energy department that there was a communication error, and the intent was to have them included, but they were not. And so that's what we're looking at. I would just mention that we always strive in the finance division for excellence, and we don't like to have to come back, but we do feel it's important that we're transparent and that we bring this to the council and to the residents of Provo so they're aware of it. But this is what we're recommending, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Thank you, Mr. Borgett. This is now open for a public hearing. Is there anybody online or here that would like to make a comment?
There's nobody currently in the attendees list.
Okay, go ahead and close the public comment then. Discussion from the council? It's pretty straightforward, but any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Chair Sewell?
Yes.
I, Mr. Shipley, will vote yes. Councillor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Harding.
Yes.
Okay, the vote is unanimous. It passes. Next item of business tonight is a resolution appropriating $12,855 in the Economic Development Division in the general fund for a sales tax increment post-performance payment to Parkway Village. If members of the public would like to make a comment on this item, go ahead and call or sign in now. This item will be presented by Keith Morey, Development Services Assistant Director. Keith?
Hi, thank you very much. We talked a little bit earlier this afternoon in the work session about a similar agreement for Days Market. This is the Parkway Village reimbursement agreement that we entered into with them. This one's taken us a little bit of time. I kind of alluded to that during the work session just because we had to kind of figure out which businesses had been there when we made the agreement, which ones are in there now. So we did a couple of audits and had some back and forth with the property owner. Went and collected all the sales tax information over the last 12 months and have come back with an amount that they've received above what the baseline was of $12,855. So in accordance with the agreement that we adopted, I would ask for the council's approval to allow us to cut that check to them, basically to show our support for their improvements there and hopefully a bright future going forward. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a quick question on these. So this is a contract that the city enters or the redevelopment agency enters with the private business. Why, when it's a commitment of the city, does the council approve it each time?
Well, and this actually isn't through the redevelopment agency. This is just an agreement with the city council. And so it differentiates a little bit because it's not a redevelopment project. Basically, I think historically what's happened is the city has identified projects that maybe were suffering a little bit because they've become a little bit dated. And instead of allowing that deterioration maybe to progress until you get kind of what happened with Plumtree Plaza and it's irreversible, we've partnered with developers that had an interest in reinvesting and suggested to them that if they were willing to do that, we could share back a portion of the sales tax increment that they generate if they make these improvements. And so because of that, it's a direct agreement between us and them. City council is the one that kind of receives the sales tax for the city on the city's behalf and has the accountability to be accountable for those funds. So this agreement is directly with you to make sure that you feel comfortable that this is an appropriate use of those funds as opposed to spending them somewhere else. And I mean, I think there are citizens that might express concern about why we would be involved in public business like this. But I think especially in a city that begins to age over time, if there's not a constant reinvestment by the developer to make these improvements, I think there's just a progression that becomes very detrimental to the community. And I think you see that throughout the country in areas where that decline just becomes irreversible. And we've seen that, I think, in our own community. And so to the extent we can find ways, small ways, and I think this is a small way, I mean, you know, $12,000 contribution for a year will never repay them for the $2 million investment they made in this shopping area. But I think hopefully it shows our good faith that we're an invested partner with them, that we recognize their commitment and the benefit to the community, and we want to see them continue to flourish. So does that answer your question?
That's exactly what I was hoping for. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones maybe has some clarification.
Yeah, I just thought maybe approaching it from a little bit of a different angle. It's really because of the method for coming up with the money. I mean, what the city is in a contract with this group in order to make this payment. So essentially the money has to come from somewhere and has to be paid. But the issue is, and the council approved that contract. So the agreement is in place since the council's approval some time ago. The issue though becomes is that the amount of money to spend on this is based on taxes that and tax results that I don't think are readily available for us at the time that the budget is set. So I would, speaking without consulting finance on this point, there's probably a way to structure this so that the money is put into the budget at the beginning of the year and doesn't have to be appropriated. But it seems to me like it would be difficult to do that because the tax increment probably isn't available at the time that happens. So our custom and practice has been to appropriate it after the amount of money has been determined.
Well, and if I can make a further comment on that, Two, one thing that's essential to me is that these are post-performance. So they hinge on the fact that that whatever improvements the developer has made to the project actually make a difference. If for whatever reason, they decide to plant pink tulips and they spend $2 million planting pink tulips and they all die at the end of the year, and so there isn't a progressive advance in sales tax above what we established as the base before they make those improvements and plant pink tulips, then we wouldn't continue to contribute. And so by doing this annually and not making it a regular budget process, I think it gives us the chance to hold them accountable and to make sure that they're actually performing, or to call the question of you're not performing and what's happened. I mean, I think it rises that level back to my department every year to say, let's do an evaluation. How's it going? Were we successful? Do we do more of these? Did we miss the mark somehow on this one? And should we improve if we do another one? So to me, it's kind of a good reflection point for us annually to look back and say, what's happened through this year? And did we hit the mark?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I will go ahead and open this item for public comment. Mr. Strachan, anybody online? Is there anybody here that would like to speak to this item? Okay, we'll go ahead and close that and bring it back for discussion. Any discussion from the council on this particular item? All right, we'll go ahead and close discussion, call for a vote. Chair Sewell?
Yes.
I, Mr. Shipley, will vote yes. Councillor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore? Councillor
Yes.
Fillmore? Thank you. Councillor Hoban?
Yes.
Councillor Hanley?
Yes.
Councillor Harding?
Yes.
So it passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
And that's our last scheduled item. So if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council by unanimous consent.